What are you doing, Tucky? Hey, Tucker. Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. And if you're new here, thanks for checking us out. In today's video, we're gonna jump right into how to make a lantern. Designing the lantern in LightBurn and getting it cut out on the laser, and how to, essentially use it as just a general template that you can build any kind of lantern from. I'm not real fond of the whole finger joint boxes that you've seen out there. The template that I designed actually uses an interlocking mechanism, so all of the pieces kind of interlock together, which is great because you don't need any glue. So, and it's a great lantern because it's a blank template. You can pull in any kind of design, and you can use it for fall, you can use it for Christmas, or any kind of holidays that are coming up, or any kind of event that you want to create a lantern for. So it's really simple to make, really fun to make, and a great gift for kids, especially around the holidays if you want to try and get them into either the Halloween spirit, Christmas spirit, Thanksgiving, etc. These are great lanterns to cut out and just have the kids sit around and paint and just have fun. So if that's something you're interested in, stick around. We're about to jump right into it. All right, y'all, so let's just jump right into it. So I wanted to walk through a couple things that I do in LightBurn when I'm doing some design. I think this is very helpful to most folks, when they're kind of getting started. So you'll notice up here at the top, I have a reference to 3mm, 6mm, and also to the lantern size. This is just my own personal reference. I like to do this just to, when I'm creating something, I don't want to always have to kind of think of like, what is the actual size of 3mm? When it comes to inches, because I typically work in inches versus millimeters. I mean, it's different from everybody. So this is just kind of how I do it. I also wanted to kind of show you what it is that we're going to be creating. This is basically the template that I've created. Down here I have a bat, and I'm going to show you how you can incorporate that into each one of these panels. And the lantern we're actually going to be making is this scary face right here. So I'm going to show you how I create that, and how we actually get that into each one of the panels. And then I'll kind of go through each one of these and explain what they are. So, all right, so let's get started. All right, so the first thing that you're going to notice, let's just kind of scroll over here and kind of look at the design here. As I mentioned, earlier in the video, I'm not real fond of the finger joint mechanism that kind of puts together boxes. I like to use these interlocking tabs. I just think that it's much easier, especially for customers, when you're shipping out something like this, a design that's like, you're shipping it flat panel and they're going to have to kind of assemble it themselves. This is a lot easier to do. It also doesn't require any glue, so it makes it really easy for the customer to just, pull it out, slide the pieces together, fit them into the tab slots, and they have their lantern. So that's kind of why I came up with this design. It's not an original design by me. I had some other lanterns that I purchased, prior in the past that kind of had this design, and I thought, hey, this is just a great way for lanterns and for boxes in general, just to be put together and make it dead simple for the customer themselves. So, all right, so let's look at a few of the pieces here. So you'll notice, there are 4 different walls to this lantern. This section up here, this piece up here is actually the bottom plate. This piece up here is actually the top plate. And then this sits inside the top plate, right where I have this blue outline right now. And this is actually a score line. So when I cut this out on the laser, I actually just score this. And that gives me a reference for placing this piece right here. And what that does is when I go through and I assemble this, it allows you to basically create an inside lip on the top, so that the top actually sits secure inside inside the walls themselves. So All right, so one of the first things that we're going to do is I'm going to take this bat. I'm just going to bring it over here and show you how you can take pretty much any image. I always use line drawings typically, or clip art when I'm creating something. And when you bring it in, it's actually an image, so you can't really use it. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is go do a trace. So if you right click with your mouse and you go down and you click on trace image, it's going to bring up another window for you. And in this window itself, you can zoom just by using the wheel on your mouse. And typically I like to fade the image because that gives me a better reference as to what the outline is going to be. And with this one, it's a very simple image, so I don't really have to change a lot. I don't have to really change anything. I'm just going to accept it the way that it's traced out right here. So I'm going to click OK. And that's as simple as it is. Now I can just go back and I can move my image out of the way. And I'll put it onto like another layer, and I'll just hide that layer in case I need to go back and I need to use it for anything else. So I'm just going to go over there and hide it. And now that I have my bat, I can use that when I get into doing the design here. So I'm just going to kind of move it out of the way. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create these little panels right here. And they're really simple to make. We're going to go over and select the square tool. And I'm just going to draw a line. And actually, I'm going to put it onto a different color. I'm going to put it onto the black layer so that we can see it. And you'll notice up here, I have this unlocked and I'm working in inches. So I'm just going to make my reference point. I'm going to say I want it to be 6 inches across and I want it to be 8 inches tall, because we're making an 8x10 or an 8x6 lantern. So actually I need to go up and make a change to my reference here, because right now I have 8x10, but it's actually 8x6. So I'm just going to make that change. And then we'll scroll in here. So we have our simple box, and you can see it's very similar to what's over here. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to create these slots that are right here. And that's where this reference comes in really handy by having, we're going to do a 3mm box. You can do it as a 6mm. And so that's why this reference point is really good, because we're going to make these 3mm, which is the thickness of the plywood that we're going to use. So. All right, so now that we have our box, let's go in and create these tab pieces. So we're going to go back up to the square tool again here, and I'm just going to draw out a square or a long rectangle. And I'm in inches right now. And I'm still unlocked, and I'm going to go back up to my reference here of 3mm. So I want to make this 3mm in width. So that is 0.11811. And the height, we're going to do it at, our box itself is going to be 8 inches tall. And for it to interlock properly, we want it to be 4 inches. But I also like to add just the width of what the material is. So we're going to make this 4.11. Now, we're going to need 2 of these. So I'm just going to duplicate it. And I'm going to take this one and I'm going to move it to the opposite corner. And I'm just going to zoom in here. And what I like to do is I'll take both of these shapes right here, and I'll use the tools up here at the top because I want it to align left. And then I also want it to align to the bottom. I'm going to grab this rectangle, this tab piece here, and I'm just going to shift it over 2 spaces. So I'm just going to hit my arrow key once, twice. Then I'm going to group these together so that they don't move. I'm going to take these 2 pieces right here, and I'm going to do the same thing. So now I'm going to align to the right, and I'm going to align to the bottom. Then I'm also going to grab this piece right here and do the same thing. So I'm going to use my left arrow key. I'm going to move over twice, once and twice. So now that I have them together, I need to weld the shapes together. And what the welding is going to do is it's going to remove this little piece right down here at the bottom, and that's going to create our tab. All right, so let's grab our shape here, and over on the left in this menu here, we're going to use the weld tool, and this is just going to weld all the selected shapes together. So I'm going to hit weld, and now you'll see I have 2 empty spaces, 2 slots here. All right, so that's our first panel. Now, the other thing that we need to do, because I'm not using the finger joint mechanism, we need to create a tab down here at the bottom for this to fit into. So as you recall, we made this to be 6 inches across, and I like to have, about a ½ inch, 3/4 of an inch on either side. So we're going to go back up to the square tool here, and we're going to create a square. And we're going to set the height of that square back to our reference point here. Go back up. We're cutting it out 3 millimeter. So we're going to set the height to be 0.11. So the height of this is going to be 0.11811. And we're going to set our width to be 4.5 inches. So because our box is 6 inches across, setting this to 4.5, that leaves us about 3/4 on each side. So now I'm going to highlight all of this together, and I'm going to go over to the line tool, and I'm going to align to the bottom, and then I'm just going to zoom in here so you can see what I'm doing. You see this, how the cursor changes from the arrow to this little symbol. I don't even know what to call it, but essentially if I drag that down right on top of this line, it's going to put them together like that. So it's perfectly aligned to the bottom. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight it all again, and I'm just going to make sure that it is vertically centered. So that way, I know that this tab is in the exact spot that I want it. I'm going to highlight everything again, and I'm going to weld again. And so now I have my shape. So there's my first panel. All right, so I just wanted to show you how to create that panel. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to undo my work, because I'm going to show you a very simple way to create these panels so that you're just essentially creating 2, and then you can just duplicate them and you'll have all 4 of your walls. And just going back to the point where we created these 2 rectangle slots, I'm just going to take everything and I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm just going to move it off to the side. So I'm going to highlight everything, and I'm going to go to the Align tool, and I'm going to align to the top. And you'll see now these 2 have been moved up to the top. All right. So let's go back here. Let's just weld our shape together. And we'll grab this shape right here, highlight everything, and click Weld again. And now you'll see we have 2 slots. So this will make sense to you once we start to put that together. So we essentially have our 2 panels. So let's just move them over here. Now we need to create this tab again on the bottom. So I'm just going to go back over to the square tool. I'm just going to draw a square. And as you recall, we're going to make the height the thickness of the material that we're actually cutting in. So that's 0.11811. And I'm going to make the width 4.5 because I want to have about 3/4 on each side. So, and I'm just going to, before that, I'm going to duplicate this piece right here. So we're going to use that and create another tab over here. So let's just highlight these and let's align V center. And then we're also going to align to the bottom. Okay. And you'll see it's kind of on the inside here. Same, we're going to do that with this one right here. We're going to align V center and we're going to align to the bottom. Okay. Now I'm going to zoom in here and you'll see if when I move my mouse, you'll see that the mouse actually changes from this arrow to this different little icon looking thing. And if I just pull it down a little bit, it'll click right in place. Okay. What it does is it basically puts the lines together. So when we merge this, they're all going to become one shape. So if I highlight everything here again and I click Weld, you'll see now it's created a tab at the bottom. Okay. So we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to highlight and we're going to weld. And so now we essentially have our 2 panels. So because we need 4, we're just going to essentially highlight everything here and we're going to click duplicate. And now we got 4. There's a couple different ways that you can do that, but I find that's pretty much the simplest piece, all right, or simplest way to do it. So, okay, so now we need to create our inside section. If you're doing this design right here, the scary face, then you really don't need to do this step. But I'm going to walk through this step because we're actually going to go incorporate this bat, and I want to show you how you can do that. I'm just using a bat for example, but you can use pretty much any design because we're going to essentially do a cutout in the center of this, but we want to make sure that the bat is still adhered and not just kind of like in the center of the design, because otherwise it's just gonna cut out one big piece and not look real great. So let's go back to the square tool, and because we made this to be 8 by 6, I'm just going to draw a square over here, and I'm going to make that square, let's say, let's make our width 4 inches, and let's make our height 7 inches. Okay. And we can just drag that over here into the center of one of our panels. Of course, I'm going to go, I'm going to go line everything up. So I'm going to do align V center and align H center. So that just puts a dead simple right in the center of that. Let me just move these out of the way just so that we can kind of work directly with this piece. So let's zoom in here. Okay, so now this is where we're going to put our bat. And we're just going to, we're going to kind of move it around into a design that we like. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to drag my bat over. And before I do anything to it, I'm going to duplicate it because we're going to do a couple different things here with it. And I'm just going to drag it into, the center of my design here. Now I'm going to shrink it up because we're going to attach it to the sides here. And really what you're trying to do is you want to make sure that a piece of the bat is essentially on, touching all of these different lines that are around the center, because we're going to use the weld tool again, and we're going to cut these out. So I'm just going to zoom in here. I'm going to rotate it a little bit, just because I want to come up with something kind of unique. And so just kind of move it around and play with it until you come up with a design that, that you like. You can stretch it out a little bit. All you're really trying to do is ensure that your bat is on the, touching these lines right here. So now I'm going to duplicate this one again. I'm just going to kind of drag it out of the way. And you can either, put them, in a straight line like this. I like to rotate a little bit, just because I'm trying to come up with something a little bit different. Put that one there, and then let's duplicate it again, and let's rotate it the opposite way. So let's rotate it this way and bring it down. And so now you can see all my pieces are kind of touching. And I just want to bring this down just a little bit because otherwise you get some really kind of like funky little corners. Let's move this in place. All right. So that's pretty much our design. And you can play around with this. I mean, it really comes down to your creativity, how you like to do things. So. All right, so the next step is we want to group our bats together. So highlight all of the bats, go up here to the top, and you'll hit the group icon. You can also right click and you'll see there's a group function here and an ungroup function. So we just want to group them together. And we're going to click on the outside line that we created. And then either if you're using a PC, hit the Shift key, or if you're using a Mac like I am, you're going to hit the Win key. Select the bats. Then you're going to go back over here to these tools on the left side, and you're going to hit the Boolean subtract. And what that's going to do is it's essentially going to cut out a design for you. So, and if I go over here, I'm just going to select fill. You can kind of get an idea of what that's going to look like. So it's essentially going to show 3 bats in the design. So that's kind of how it would look like as a solid piece. So let's just go back to the line tool, but that's essentially our design, right? So, and you know, you can go in and clean this up depending on how you like it to turn out. Some people like to remove these little pieces right here. They don't really want to have that kind of sticking out. So that's really kind of up to you how you want to do that. But essentially, I'm going to take this piece right here and I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to move it into each one of my designs over here, each one of my panels. And I like to, you know, even though you can drag and drop and it typically will center, I like to just go and double check and make sure that everything is just kind of aligned the way that I want it. So I just highlight everything, use the tools up at the top and do the horizontal and vertical center. And there we go. So now let's just group each one of these pieces together, just so that they're moved as one panel. And now we have all 4 of our pieces for the walls. So that's the first part. That's the first part of our design. All right. And we can move our bat out of the way again. Now, that's really how, if you're integrating, you know, something like a design like a bat like that, that's pretty much how you do it. But if you're going to do a shape like this where it's just kind of a face, let's do one of those. So I'm just going to grab one of my panels over here. I'm just going to drag it into place. I'm going to zoom in here and I'm just selecting the face itself because I don't want the whole panel. Like I don't need the square that's over here because I'm not cutting that out. And I'm just going to highlight everything here. I'm going to group it together so it's one piece. And essentially, I'm just going to drag it out. You know, I want it to kind of fit inside this design right here. I want it to fit in my panel and look really nice. So, and then I'm just going to highlight everything and horizontal align and vertical align. And if I was to go back in here and I set this back to fill, that's essentially what it's going to cut out. I mean, just know that these panels are a solid piece of wood, so that's the shape that's going to get cut out. So let's switch back to line. So it's really simple. It's really easy to create these, but you know, and I like to have this template right here just because anytime I go to do a design, I always have, you know, my templates ready to go. So and I'm just going to go down here and I'm going to unhide all my shapes. You know, I'll just unhide these just so you can kind of see some of the designs that I did. So, you know, I did like this scary skull and I did a pumpkin and what have you. And I'm also going to show you how I create these handles for the top. So that's going to be our next step. Let me go back in and hide these. All right, so now we have our panels in place. Let's go create this little piece right here, okay? And if you look at the top, you can see this is 5 inches by 5 inches, right? So I'm essentially creating a top piece right here that is going to fit exactly on the top of my lantern, which is 6 by 6. So to do that, I'm just going to draw a square that's essentially 6 by 6. And let me just remove this face here, and we'll zoom in here. So highlight your square, make sure that you're on the unlock right here, and you're just going to do 6 by 6. And you know, you can also do this another way. You can hit if you're on Windows on a PC again, you can hit the Shift key, or if you're on Mac, you can hit the Win key. When you hold that down and you drag it, it's going to create a perfect square, perfect size squares for you. So, but I just like to just draw a square and then go set the size that I want it to be. It's just my preference. So, so you can see I have a 6 by 6 right here. And now I need to create this inside piece right here, which is the blue one. And I'm just going to make that is 5 by 5 because I'm just going in an inch on each end. So first thing that you want to do is draw another square. And you're going to go set that square to be 5 by 5. And then we're going to use the offset tool right here. This is for offset shapes. And we're going to select inward. And, you know, the size of the tab is really up to you. I'm going to make mine, I believe I did mine 2.5. So basically a 1/4 inch. And then I'm just going to group them together. So I have one piece. So this is going to be an individual piece that gets cut out, and it's going to get glued into the top itself. All right. So that's our top section. Then we also have this piece right here. This, ungroup this so you can see exactly what it is that I'm highlighting here. That's this piece right here. And you'll see this piece is 2 inches wide, and it is the exact height that we need for our topper. And the reason that I did this 0.11 versus the 0.11811 is I want this to be a little bit tighter fit so that when I go to put the top handle on, it fits in there very snugly. And it's not loose and not flopping around. And this will allow them to not really have to glue it in place because if it fits nice and snug, they can just lift the lid right off. All right, so let's create that piece right there. So back to the rectangle tool. We're just going to draw a rectangle here. And really, you know, the width is determined by what you want. I just like to use 2 inches. I just think that it's, you know, probably the easiest size for me to use, specifically once I start to build the top tab. You'll see how that works. And then I'm going to set my height right now to 0.11 so I can get that nice snug fit. And then I'm just going to highlight everything here again. And I'm just going to center it all. Okay. And then group it all together. And so that's our top. All right. So now we have our 4 panels. We have our top. All right. So let's do the score line. So if I ungroup this for a moment and I take these 2 pieces right here, I'm just going to duplicate them. It's going to be a separate piece that gets glued in place. So I'm just going to highlight these and I'm just going to go put it onto a different layer. So I'll put it onto 19, for example. And over in here in 19, you can see that it's a line. And when we go to set our speed and power, that's where you're going to set it to score versus actually cut out. All right. So let's just group this all together. So we essentially have all of our pieces together. The only last piece that we have to put together is the bottom plate. And then we're also going to make our top tab to lift it's going to help us lift the lid on and off. All right. All right, so let's go create our bottom plate. So I'm just going to move this out of the way. And so we know that our lantern is 8x6. So the first thing that we need to do is use the square tool over here. And we're just going to create a square. Make sure that it's on the same layer. Go up here to the top, make sure that you're unlocked again, and we're going to make it 6x6 because that's the same size as our lantern itself. Okay. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to create the slots that are going to go in here for the tabs. So let's go back to the square tool. And if you recall from earlier in the video, we made our tabs 4.5 inches. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle here. And I'm going to make it 4.5 inches wide. And we know that our material is 3 millimeter. So we're going to make the height 0.11811, 0.11811. There's our first slot. And now we need to duplicate this 3 times. So we're just going to duplicate it. Move it down here, duplicate again, and we're going to rotate this. We're going to go to the arrange tool, and we're going to rotate it. It doesn't matter at this point, clockwise, counterclockwise, move it over to the side, duplicate it again, and move that over here. Now, easy way to align these. Let's just zoom right in here. If you're familiar with LightBurn, you know if you drag from right to left, it will select everything that you kind of touch from right to left. If you go from the other side, you can select everything altogether from left to right. But if you were to go down here and try and select, just these two pieces, it doesn't grab those. So we're going to go from right to left. We're going to grab our two pieces right here, and we're going to go to the Align tool, and we want to align V center. Okay, then just group those so they don't move. Go right to left again. Grab these pieces, and let's go make sure those are horizontally centered. Okay, so now I'm just going to drag them over to the edges here. Zoom in just so I can put it on the tool here. And you notice, like, if I grab this outside edge, it's really hard to get it to kind of like snap in place, because what it wants to do is it wants to snap on the line that you're touching. So we want to make sure that we're grabbing it from the outside line and snapping it in place. Okay. So let's just go ungroup everything, just because now we're going to work with the individual pieces. Let's do the same thing here. We're just going to snap that one into place. And we'll take this guy down here and snap that into place. Okay. So now we can just make sure that we're aligned again. Okay. You can see I moved it just a little bit. And, because we made these 4.5 inches, one of the key things that you need to know here is that the distance from the corner to the edge needs to be that 3/4 of an inch, right? Because our lantern itself is 6 inches. Our tabs are 4.5 inches, so that leaves us 1.5 inches. So we divide that by 2 because we're putting this in the center. So we need to make sure that we have 3/4 of an inch on each side. Okay, same with here, 3/4 of an inch here, 3/4 of an inch here. That way our tabs are all going to line up when we go to slip this together. They're all going to fit in place. Okay, now just grab the edge of one of them, tab in twice. And there is our bottom panel. Okay. Now we're just going to group it all together. And we have our bottom plate. So essentially what we've created so far, we have our 4 panels. We have our top piece right here. We have our inside lip that's going to allow us to lock the top in place when we put it on. And we also have our bottom panel. So the next piece that we need to create, and this is our final piece, is the top piece, I guess the tab that's going to go up here and slip into this little joint right here. Okay. All right, so let's go make our top tab. So the first thing that we want to do is grab the square tool, and we're going to draw a rectangle, and we're going to make that rectangle 2 inches. We want it to fit inside our slot that's over here. Okay, and we're going to set our height to 0.11811, which is the thickness of our wood. Okay. Put that down here. Now let's go grab our bat, because we're going to use that to make this really cool looking tab top. The first thing that we need to do, because right now it's 8 inches, we need to resize it. So I'm going to make sure I'm locked, because I want to keep the ratio consistent. I don't want to get it skewed. So I'm going to lock it, and I'm going to set this at about 3 inches. Okay. And let me just zoom in here so you can see a little bit closer on what I'm doing. So we have our tab piece right here, okay? And then we also have our bat. So now we need to create another piece that is a little bit bigger than what our tab is, right? Because we want this to kind of span over the top. So I'm just going to draw another rectangle here, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to make it, I'm going to unlock here. Let's make it 2.5 inches, okay? And let's make it about, let's make it 1/2 inch in height, okay? Now let's drag this up here, and we're going to basically put our bat and our box here, our tab together. We're going to weld these together. So let's just vertically align them first. Make sure that they're nice and close to each other. Let's highlight everything here and use the weld tool. And you can see I had a couple little pieces here, so I'm just going to clean that up. And you can play around with this. I mean, I'm just trying to get this piece put together so you can see how it all comes together. Now I don't like these square corners right here, so I'm going to use the radius tool. I have mine set to 0.15, and I'm just going to click on these corners just to kind of give them a nice little rounded edge, okay? And the last piece of that is I'm going to take my tab piece and I'm going to drop it in place. I'm going to make sure everything is vertically aligned, and I'm going to weld that together as well. And there we go. There's our top part. So this is going to essentially sit on top and slip right into here. And it's going to fit nice and snugly and allow us to let the top on and off quite easily. All right, so that's essentially it. We have everything together. We have all 4 of our panels. We have our top right here. We have our inside lip, and we have our base plate. So we are set to go. So I'm going to take this over to the laser and get it cut out. I think I already have a few of these lanterns that are already cut out, so I'm probably just going to grab one and show you how to get it assembled. So let's move on to the next step. All right, so now you can see that we got our 4 panels here in place, and it looks pretty good. Our bats turned out pretty well. All of our tabs turned out pretty well. There is our bottom plate and our top plate with our lip glued in place. There is the tab that we'll use on top to lift the lid on and off. And I just wanted to show you this real quick. Hopefully you can see that. I'm trying to zoom in here and give you a little bit of a clearer look, but you can see the very faint line where we did the score. That's just going to help us glue that extra piece, that lip piece right there in place. And I just want to show you what this looks like. I'll try and zoom in here so that you can see what it looks like in place. Give you a better idea, but I'm sure most people are, you're pretty familiar probably with what a lip looks like on the inside of a top. And this will just help us secure the top in place once we get everything assembled. All right, so here I'm going to show you how to assemble. You can see here's our panels with our slots cut in them, and our tab that's on the bottom that's going to slip into our base plate. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to slide these first 2 pieces together, get a couple of the walls put together, and you can see how they just slip right into each other. So there's no glue, there's no tabs that have to be glued together. That's really why I don't like the finger joint method. This is just much easier. When you ship this out to a customer and they can just take it straight out of the packaging and slide the pieces together, makes for a much better product and much more fun for them to do. So none of that frustration of having to get out glue and try and line up all of the finger joints and get them all glued together and put in place. And once it's glued together, you can't really take it apart. Where with this, once you're done using it, you can actually take everything apart and just store it flat. So, all right. So here's our base plate. You can see the slots that we cut for our base plate. So we're going to sit the lantern right on top and just push those tabs right in. And they just lock right into place here. And I'm going to zoom in here just so that you can kind of see this is how it all kind of interlocks together. Hopefully you can see that. I mean, they come together really, really nicely, I find. Sometimes it takes a little finessing to get them all together, but once assembled, they look pretty nice. And then here's our top with our lip on the bottom. We're just going to slip that into place and secure it. And there's our assembled lantern. So the last piece now that we have is we just need to put the topper on. So, all right, so let me just grab that piece, and you can see we have our tab on the bottom of there. I'm going to show that right there. Hopefully, sorry, the focus is a little bit off, but try to zoom in there. But you can see that there's a tab on the bottom, and we extended this a little bit just so that it doesn't fall straight into the lantern. And you can mess with the settings when you're creating these in LightBurn. If you find that it's a little bit of a loose fit, you can always make that slot on top just a little bit smaller, just so you get a really nice friction fit. I do find some customers like to glue this in place just on the top because they want to hang it from, either hang it in their hallway or hang it in the doorway or hang it from a tree or something outside during the holiday season. So, all right, so now I'm just going to take it apart, and you can see how easy this comes apart. And they're just all flat pieces, so they just all sit together. And this is how they get shipped. So I just put them all together, wrap them up. Dead simple. I mean, nothing easier. Well, there you have it, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to check this out and watch this video on how to create a lantern template. I hope that you found it informative and educational, and I hope that I passed on some tips and tricks on how to create these, and that you'll be creating some really cool lanterns for yourself in the future. Please leave your comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and we will see you on the next video. Have a great day.